Let's bring in Farhan. He's a traveling man lately. We've had some.
I like the cardigan.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
I love it too. I'm a cardigan guy.
Listen, do you have a pipe that goes with that?
Oh. No, I should get one. That would be good.
Corn pipe.
Pipe
I think
cardigan.
a big hooked one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And if you go into a tobacco shop and buy pipe tobacco, they take you serious. This guy knows. This guy's seen some stuff. Speaking of a guy that's seen some stuff, Farhan Lalji, you kind of broke the Ajou Ajou. What do you know that maybe we don't know about Ajou Ajou signing in Indy?
Well, I do think that they think there's something there. Now, look, at the end of the day, there's no bonus attached to it, right? So, it's not like there's a huge incentive to keep him. But I think they viewed him as a really, really intriguing prospect, more than just a training camp body per se. I think there's a real opportunity there. Right now, look, the one thing with Ajou is that his speed at an NFL level. I'm not sure yet, right? Like watching him run at the CFL Combine, didn't put up necessarily great times, but in his workout, he really impressed a lot of people with his ability to catch the ball, his fluidity, his overall strength. Like he looks good coming off the bus, right? As you guys know in Regina. So it wouldn't shock me that if he had a really good training camp that they could keep him on a practice roster and try to develop him for a little while and really find some value there, right? Because if you can get a guy like that to eventually come in and play, that's found money from an NFL perspective, right? I thought he did a lot of really good things last year with his time in the CFL. Nobody really expected him to do that, again, given how poorly the Combine performance went, how low he got drafted. But he's a hungry player, and he's still a long shot. But he's at a stage in his career where he can take that shot. A guy like Justin McInnis, for example, the Broncos wanted to sign him. No bonus attached at all, right? And so if you're at the stage of your career where you're going to make probably $250,000, do you want to pass up a chunk of that for an NFL opportunity where you're a real long shot, no guarantees, no bonuses? Whereas a guy like Ajou Ajou, this is the time in your career to take that shot. So good for him for doing it.
Got some runway there.
Yeah. Do you picture them using him more in a tight end style scenario or as some extra depth in that position rather than receiver because of speed?
I don't think so. I just think to get a guy in at this stage, like you'd have to have made that decision earlier, give him an opportunity to gain that weight. Now is he going to be an X receiver on one side of the field that's asked to take the top off of defense? No, he's not. So could you potentially use him in a receiver / situational H-back type of guy? You potentially could, but again, he's still got a ways to go just to get into that conversation. Now, if you put him on a practice roster, then maybe you decide, okay, we're going to invest a year and try to make him a tight end. But I don't know. That's not been expressed to me that that's their long-term projection for him.
Do you know enough about the depths of what Indy's got in the stable as far as receivers?
I can't sit here and go through a name-by-name depth chart, but I know that receivers are a real need position for them. So, the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to see what they do in the draft, right? Because you've got Anthony Richardson there, who's a polarizing prospect, but they took him in the top 5 in the draft, right? So you probably aren't ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater yet, right? So do you draft a receiver high? Do you draft an offensive lineman high? They've got a number of needs there in Indianapolis. So, if they can find some money here, like I said, if this could turn into found money for them, that over the course of the next 3 months, right, like he's going to sign a futures deal once the season's over, and then he's going to go to Indianapolis. He's probably going to spend 3 months there, go through their entire offseason program, and if they see enough there, does that mean they don't take as many receivers in the draft, right? Like he's certainly not going to affect what they do in the top couple of rounds, but he might affect what they do in round 6 and 7, right? That maybe if they were going to take a second or a third receiver there, they might not if they like what they see. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next few months here.
Yeah, you've seen it play out before when guys go down, in which I'm totally in the dark. I know of guys going down, but I don't. So what would be maybe the earliest that Rider Nation, if it didn't work out, you'd see him back? And then what would be, like, obviously worst case for Rider Nation, or best case, he stays there. But what would maybe be the earliest that they would figure that out, Farhan, from your expertise?
Well, look, there's a number of ways it could go, right? I mean, he might not make it to training camp, right? But if he gets to training camp, in the olden days, there was a number of different cut-down dates, right? So, a guy could get brought back after the first exhibition game. Well, that doesn't happen now. There's only one cut-down date that you have to go through, and that's at the end of camp. So, and now what happens is that extra guys get kept around to play in that last preseason game because they want to keep the starters healthy. But it is an opportunity to make an impression and potentially get onto a practice roster. So, if the OTAs don't go well, right, you could see him back in July, right? They've got rookie mini camps, they've got OTAs, they've got rookie mini camps, then they've got a main mini camp where everybody's involved. And at that point, you could see a decision get made. But if he gets to training camp, then he's going to be there until September.
Do you think the Riders do some tire kicking now, maybe more so than they would have on a couple guys? Free agents?
Potentially, right? But like for me, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the free agent class until we get to the tampering window, because right up until the 11th hour before the tampering window, guys are going to get signed. And we go through this exercise where we look at, pick any number of names that we say, okay, these are our top 30 Canadians, these are our top 30 imports. And then by the time we get to the night before the tampering window opens, every name has been crossed off because they've re-signed, right? And then you only get, maybe 5 of each that are actually going to go on the market, names of note. So I'm going to wait before I decide who they're going to be kicking the tires on heavily.
I'm going to change the topic a little bit here and go to the Vancouver Canucks and the hot mess that it presently is. I mean, now we're hearing Brock Besser may not be there. What's going on in that organization? Do they need a hug? Do they need to sing Kumbaya?
Yeah,
what do they need to do?
Yeah, I think they need a collective hug. I think so, right? Nobody would have expected at the start of the year this is what it was going to look like, right? Now, in the case of Brock Besser, they didn't get him signed in the offseason. They wanted to see whether or not he could consistently produce. I don't think anybody expected him to be a full-time 40-goal scorer. He's been in the league long enough to know that that's the high watermark, right? But he should be a low 30-goal scorer, right? That should be the baseline for him, because he's been close to that on a number of occasions, and injuries have prevented him from getting there. So, he hasn't been good out of the gate, right? None of the core members of the Vancouver Canucks outside of Quinn Hughes have been good or healthy all the way through. So, we'll see what happens with Besser. He wants to be here. That much is clear. But the organization says they're still evaluating. I don't know what there is to evaluate at this stage of his career. You know what you've got. He's played over 500 games in a Canuck uniform. And then, as far as the other guys are concerned, with JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, and it's certainly weighing on the organization. And there's people in this market, Canuck Twitter is an ugly, ugly place, right? So there's all these people that say, Canuck Twitter and Oiler Twitter are just the most toxic entities you could possibly imagine. I've gotten into the habit of sending out tweets and muting the conversation just so I don't have to hear back. So, what's going to happen there, right? I don't think they're going to sell him for pennies on the dollar. And there's a lot of people who think they should, just because of the weight this is putting on the organization right now. And it's not like they're just looking to trade him because of all the noise. There actually is something going on there that's making them decide, look, we got to make a move here. And it is weighing on the organization. So do you sell him for pennies on the dollar, or do you wait until the deadline, or potentially even the offseason, where there's going to be more suitors and there's going to be more interest? But at the same time, if the second half of the year for JT Miller goes as poorly as the first half, what have you been left with for an asset?
Yeah,
right.
His value is not a good place to be. Yeah. It's frustrating to watch too, because that's a better hockey team than what they're showing night after night, and that in that dressing room there's a big ball of cancer rolling around in there, and they got to get it out.
Well, is it a better organization? Like, you could look at this and say, what is going on based on last year? Or you can look at last year in the context of the previous 10 and maybe view last year as the outlier, right? Like, there's a few ways to look at it.
True.
So,
True.
And people believe or are hoping that once Miller is gone, that Pettersson will have a certain weight lifted and he'll return to the player he was 12 months ago. I have my doubts. I really do. And for a guy that can't handle the pressure to begin with, imagine what the narrative is like when they get rid of JT Miller. And maybe we never hear the true story of what happened. And they get rid of JT Miller and everyone says, oh, Pettersson, they got rid of Miller because of you, and now you're not performing, right? Like, imagine the weight that's going to be on that guy, because when he didn't have a contract, there was a weight of a pending contract. When he did sign the contract, then the story is he's now having to live up to the contract, and that's a lot of pressure. Imagine if they send number 9 out the door, the added pressure that's going to go on number 40 in that moment.
Do they switch that? Do they move Pettersson instead of Miller?
Right now, I don't think that's what they want to do. I think they believe there's still a ceiling and an upside for Pettersson to hit, although they could get a lot more from Pettersson at this point than they could from Miller. But, can you wind everything back and keep Miller in the room, right? Like, I think that's going to be difficult at this stage. So everyone's going to play nice and try to make the best of it, but this is a massive, massive anchor in that locker room right now.
Oh, I just want it to explode. It's like a family reunion.
It is.
Where you know that there's
I just feel for Quinn Hughes. I feel for Quinn Hughes because he's the one guy that's playing, like, this guy's playing at a Hart Trophy level. The Canucks are, a point out of a playoff spot right now because of that guy and that guy only. And, right? And so, like, you just wasted a year of Quinn Hughes' prime. And he's got 2 more years left on his deal. You better fix up a lot in order to keep him longer term.
No doubt.
You know what is one of you talk about Oiler Twitter and Canuck Twitter. One of the funniest things to watch and listen to is Edmonton media after this cross-check incident. It's comical. I actually got an Edmonton media type coming on the show tomorrow. But what Farhan, you saw it, obviously Myers, he cross-checked him right in the face.
Right in the
he wanted to go lower, he says. What was your take on everything there as a Canucks guy?
Well, look, originally my thought was that McDavid would get a game and that Myers would get 2 games. And McDavid would get a game only because he's McDavid. And I don't hate that, right? Like, I don't, because I do believe star players should be treated a little differently. But so, I thought 2-2 probably would have been right. 2-1 was my expectation. 3-3 is a bit of a surprise for me. I know I tweeted at the time that I think they got it right. Maybe it was a bit excessive for both in hindsight. But if you're the Oilers, this is a guy that's going to play in the Four Nations tournament. He's not going to get an All-Star break. A lot is going to be thrown on his shoulders. You might want to just say, thank you. We'll give him a break for a week, right? Because the guy needs it. The guy needs it. So it's not the end of the world. If they got it wrong, they got it wrong by 1 game. And for everybody saying that, well, if they would have just done this with Connor Garland, that wouldn't have helped the situation because the Oilers had the puck. There would have been no penalty called. The game would have ended with a guy's arm in the air, Weston McCauley's arm in the air, and it wouldn't have really changed much. Did Connor Garland deserve a holding penalty? Of course he did. But that doesn't warrant the reaction that McDavid gave. And Myers is, which was a separate incident, was just as bad.
I wonder if Garland gets a little extra. Just rub him out a little harder this evening as they play each other in that turtleneck.
An Edmonton media member who I have a lot of love and respect for basically slowed down the Zapruder film and tried to make the case that it was actually McDavid's glove hitting Garland's shoulder as opposed to stick to face. And I'm like, come on.
The intent was stick to face. The intent was stick to face.
Yeah. Heavy.
Well, and the stick hit his face. Whether the shoulder hit the glove first, the stick hit his face.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Are you going to Kansas City?
I'm going to Philadelphia tomorrow.
Oh, we were both wrong.
We had you going to Kansas City.
Okay, let's go. Let's go to that.
Because it's Buffalo, Naylor is going to cover Buffalo in Kansas City, so I get the other game.
Okay. What do the Commanders have to do to beat Philly? It's 6 points. I think it's closer than that. What are you seeing?
I'm picking Washington to win. I think right now Jaden Daniels is playing at a much higher level than Jalen Hurts is, but that offense runs through Saquon Barkley. So and the run defense for Washington is not good. So what they need to do is they can't give up 2 60-yard touchdown runs like Los Angeles did. They have to make them work. Because I really believe, in spite of how good Philadelphia's defense is, nothing is going to faze Jaden Daniels. This guy is the real deal. The NFC needs all the good quarterbacks are in the AFC. This guy's going to run the NFC for a long time. He is a special, special player. The game is played at the speed he decides it's going to be played at. And I think he's going to find a way because that's what he's done. He's not going to be wowed by the moment. Defensively, Washington just needs to make that Philadelphia run game work for their scores. 10-play drives, 12-play drives.
Yeah.
Shorten the game. Just don't make it 60-yard gash, 60-yard gash.
And we were just watching some of the highlights there, and just like when Detroit blitzed him, and he just looked so comfortable and like dumped it to earth.
16 of 19. 16 of 19.
Yeah, those are great numbers for that quarterback in that scenario.
Do you think Philly maybe stays back a bit more, doesn't blitz much at all, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's what they should do, and I say that because their defensive line is so good that they will. I think they can get pressure. Now, that said, even with an injury in the second quarter, Washington's offensive line played very, very good in that last game. So that matchup is going to be interesting to me. I don't think Philly needs to blitz a ton to get pressure. And I don't think you want to bring extra guys because Jaden Daniels is really good. And I would play more zone defense and keep eyes on the quarterback instead of playing a ton of man defense where their eyes are off the quarterback because they're chasing receivers everywhere. If they can do that and they can rally, because the one thing with Daniels, he's not crazy fast. If you watch him, he's very fluid, right? And so he gets into space. He knows when to cut. He knows when to, there's just a sense of timing where the game has slowed down so much for him as a rookie. And if you read up on all the virtual reality stuff that he's been doing for the last couple of years, how much that's contributed to the game slowing down for him. But I would want to keep 11 eyes on Jaden Daniels and not have a bunch of guys in man coverage because you're blitzing, because you will lose.
Yeah, that front four is the key to the game, from my lens. Okay, so the other one, lots of Chief fatigue going around, especially in this room.
Not me.
I don't know.
Not me at all.
No, I don't know. I thought, like, Baltimore, I was like, hey, Baltimore's going to come back and win this, and then Baltimore's going to go to Kansas City and win. And now Buffalo, I don't know. Like, how do you see, what does Buffalo have to do? Is it a score for
Buffalo's
score thing?
Well, I think it's going to be, right? Because Buffalo's defense is good. They're not special. Yeah. And Patrick Mahomes, look, I picked Kansas City to win at the start of the year, and I'm going to stick with that, although I was at the last game, and I was less impressed with Kansas City in that playoff game than I have been at any point this season, right? But I do believe when they get to the AFC title game, there's another gear there, and I do believe that they know what it takes to move the ball against Buffalo. Can Buffalo get off the field on third down? Kansas City's got the best third down offense in the league. They didn't show it in the last game. They found other ways to win, but I think they're at their best in those critical situations. So can they get off the field on third down, and can they limit them in the red zone? Because they have struggled at times in the red zone. But I do think that Mahomes is going to be able to generate long drives and keep Josh Allen off the field. So ultimately, it is going to be a match for match thing. And to be honest, Baltimore should have won that game. They really should have. They made their own mistakes and handed it back to Buffalo. So, you've got two teams that maybe didn't play their best football last week here. I'm going to stick with Kansas City just because that's what I said at the start of the year, but they did make me waver in that last playoff game against the Texans.
Does Buffalo have, and I don't know how you coach football, but when I coach football, I always like to keep something that the team hasn't seen. Some sort of wrinkle. And I know it's dangerous at times because you got to throw it out. Does Buffalo have anything to show them defensively or offensively that they haven't seen?
Probably not. I think Andy Reid has a pretty good beat on what they like to do defensively. And look, if you're Sean McDermott, you also have to do what you do. You know what I mean? Like, there's a danger in keeping a bunch of stuff. Yep. If it's something like, teams need to practice things, right? Like if you never do them and you never do them in game situations, it's difficult to bring that much out, and it's harder on defense than it is on offense. To be truthful, like, you can bring in a couple of plays and a couple of series offensively, but defensively, if you're a predominant man team and a high pressure team, and all of a sudden you want to play off and play a ton of zone, that becomes difficult if that's just not what you do. Defenses have a harder time with that. So I think they're going to go with what they're most comfortable with. We'll see if they've got another level. But like I said, I think Buffalo's been solid defensively. They haven't been special. And I do believe that, like, I think Houston's defense is better than Buffalo's. Right. Oh. So I do think Mahomes will have a little more success there.
I was shocked when Detroit went to the running back pass play at that juncture of the game. I'm like, what do you do? It's triple coverage. Of course he's going to throw. Don't do anything crazy like that. All right, well, travel safe into Philly. Man, that place. You hit up that weight
you gotta
bench
be careful.
that Maz has been talking about, the people's bench that they have in the tailgate.
Yeah.
Get your swole on before. Right on. Travel safe, Farhan.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care. Enjoy the games.